Hi everybody, my name is Miss Jen and welcome back to the laboratory.
Kiddie Quest Children's Museum!
Love of learning starts here.
Today we are going to be doing a super fun experiment. It is called Oobleck. Have you made Oobleck before? Oobleck is one of my favorite things to make because it is so interesting to play with. So for today's experiment, all you need is a tray of some sort. You will need cornstarch and water. Those are the two things you really need to make sure you have, cornstarch and water. I will be using a pipette to help me control the amount of water that I am using, but you can also just pour or use a measuring spoon, that would help. And then this tray I'm using, it is just a cookie sheet. This works super well for this type of experiment because it has ledges so that what we're doing doesn't necessarily get all over the table, but it is also big enough that we can experiment and work with our substance that we're going to do. So I am going to start mixing these things together and something is going to happen. Oobleck is actually called a non-Newtonian fluid. Have you heard of a non-Newtonian fluid before? So a Newtonian fluid would be something that does not change its thickness. So like water, it's always the same thickness, whereas a non-Newtonian fluid actually changes under pressure. So sometimes this Oobleck will act as a liquid, but when it's put under pressure, it actually starts to turn into a solid, and it can go back and forth depending on whether or not you're putting pressure on it. So I'll show you what I mean once we start mixing. The key to this is it's all about experimenting. Generally speaking, you want to do a little more cornstarch than water, but that's why we're using this pipette, so I can slowly add water as we go and then stop when it gets to a point that I feel good about. You'll see I also have some colored water here, and that is just a little bit of an additional experiment you can add on. You don't need it. I love to add the colored water. I think it makes it a little more fun, but you definitely don't need it. You can just use normal water as well. So here I have my cookie sheet, and I am going to slowly start adding cornstarch. And you'll notice I have a huge container of cornstarch. You don't need this much. I'm just going to sprinkle some of my cornstarch on the tray. Do you know what cornstarch is used for? Or maybe where you would find it in your house? Cornstarch we use when we make soups or different types of foods that you would want to make thicker. So cornstarch we can add to soup or to gravy or different things where we want to thicken it up. So I have my cornstarch here, and now I am going to slowly start adding water to my cornstarch. Like I said, I'm using a pipette. You can just pour it on if you want to. We're going to add water. And right now, you'll notice you don't really see anything happening because we do need to mix it with our hands. This is an experiment where we will get a little bit messy, but that's okay. It all cleans up pretty easily. So there we go. I think that's about good. I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to mix this up, and we are going to see what starts to happen. Mix. So you'll notice already, as I mix it around, see how it's acting like a liquid? It's dripping off of my fingers on to the tray. But if I gather it all together and put it under pressure like this, see how I can actually pick it up and hold it? It's acting kind of like a solid until I release that pressure. So if I'm squeezing it in between my fingers, it's a solid, but then once I let go, it starts to become a liquid again, and it starts to just flow off my fingers like normal water would. Oobleck is such a fun experiment because it will keep changing changing. The more water you add, or the more cornstarch you add, the consistency or that thickness will just keep changing. So this is a really fun experiment to teach us about cause and effect, as well as just that scientific process. We can experiment and do things over and over again and just see what happens. So now I'm going to add my blue and my yellow water into the mix, and we are going to do some color mixing with our Oobleck. So I'm going to move my water. I'm going to put my yellow and my blue water on the tray. Now, as you can see, my fingers are a little bit messy. That's totally fine. It will come off, but I'm just going to use my other hand for my pipette. I'm going to add some yellow, and then I'll add blue over here. Well, you can see it's slowly kind of starting to spread out, and then I will drag. Ooh, what color are we starting to get here? Looks like we're starting to get a beautiful green color. Mix, mix, mix. And like I said, this changes under pressure. So right now while it's on the tray and I'm putting my finger in it like this, it's pretty hard. It's like a solid. But then I can pick it up and it just flows out of my hand like a liquid. So when we're learning about the states of matter, this is a really great experiment to do where we can talk about solids and liquids. There's no gas in this experiment, but it is really interesting to compare the solids and the liquids. We also can, like I said, add color and make this a fun color mixing art activity where you can create patterns and shapes and different pictures with our Oobleck. Isn't that so pretty? And then if I wanted to, I could add a little more cornstarch and mix that in, and it will change the viscosity or the thickness of this again, and we can just keep adding and changing and experimenting. Ooh, see how it's like a solid when I pick it up, and then, ooh, there we go again. Drip, 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 like a liquid. Yeah, when you pick it up off the tray, it's kind of hard to pick up. But there it goes. Ooh, it's so stringy. And it's also just a great sensory experience. It feels really interesting on your hands. We could talk about how we feel. Feels kind of soft and wet. See how I can gather it all like this? You can't really gather a liquid in a pile like this, huh? So this is when it's a solid because I'm putting it under pressure with my hands, but then once I let go, it does start to turn back into a liquid again. All right, so when you are doing Oobleck and doing this fun experiment, it is so fun. I could play with this stuff for hours, but when you are all done, you wanna make sure that you throw as much of this as you can into the garbage can. Okay, so it can go down the sink. If a little bit goes down the sink, it's no big deal. But as you can see, it does get thick. So we don't wanna pour this thick liquid down our sink because it could cause some problems. So try to pour as much of it as you can into the trash can. And then if you need to, you can use a lot of water and rinse any remaining Oobleck off of the tray. As long as you rinse it with a lot of water, you should be good. But it's a super easy experiment. It will get a little bit messy, but I promise it's worth it. Once you've done this a couple times, you can upgrade from the cookie sheet. This is one of my favorite things to do, and cross it over into a sensory bin. So on our channel, we also have some videos talking about sensory bins and how to use them. And making a big batch of Oobleck in a sensory bin is a really, really interesting experience. You can put in lots of different things, see how they behave with the Oobleck, and that is just really, really fun and allows us to think outside the box a little bit. So I would start here on a cookie sheet with just a little bit of Oobleck, and then as we go, we can get bigger and bigger and do bigger, crazier experiments. Let's try one more time so you can see. Interesting. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today on the laboratory. I will see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe for more videos, and remember to check out our website for additional activities and information.